Welcome to Blend's Localization Leaders Podcast, where we speak to industry leaders who are paving the way for advancements in localization and global language operations. This episode is hosted by Yoav, Blend's CEO. Tune into Yoav's chat with Pascale Tremblay, Chief Growth Officer at LangOps Institute.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Localization Leaders Podcast, where leaders of the localization industry talk about their career, the industry, and everything in between. My name is Yoav. I am the CEO of Blend, and I'm excited to have with me today Pascale Tremblay, the Chief Growth Officer of the LangOps Institute. Welcome, Pascale.
Thank you, Yoav. It's very nice to be here today, and I look forward to our conversation with this new exciting topic of LangOps.
Absolutely. I gotta say, we'll get to that, but this is one of the things that drew me to the localization industry. I'm new to the industry. I'm relatively new to the industry, and the LangOps concept is something that I find fascinating. But first, let's begin with you introducing yourself, maybe a little bit about you, what you have done so far in your career, and how did you find yourself in the LangOps Institute?
Well, I've been in the industry for quite some time, a little bit over 20 years now. I'm passionate about language, cultures, and travel. So I personally studied linguistics, philosophy, and literature. But, at the time when I was studying, localization was not a thing. It didn't exist. And so I found myself working in a software company and then, having language background, speaking multiple languages. Then I was pulled. And then, like they say, the rest is history. So I started coordinating translations for software. And then, I wanted to explore a little bit more. So I worked for emerging technologies into solar, built localization program there. But most of my career was spent working in fashion and building language and localization programs within the fashion industry at Gap Inc. So I built a fully independent localization function that supported 4 global brands, several global offices, and really was a micro universe in and of itself. And at the time, I didn't know and probably didn't have the language, but it was very much LangOps at the core. So this journey to LangOps has been in the works for a very long time, but now it's really coming more into the sphere.
So, that's very interesting because I think LangOps, some people heard the term, they kind of are hearing this coming and appearing in more and more conversations. How do you see LangOps? And what drew you to actually join the institute itself? I mean, I assume that you think that's going to be something that will help the industry, right? And so, how do you see the industry right now? What are we dealing with, and why LangOps is something that might help us?
Well, so LangOps recognizes that the work that we do as localization professionals is a lot more than what we express through the localization processes and what I like to say, the little localization box. So first of all, I want to clarify too, I spent all my career on the organizational side. So it was about delivering content at global scale, right? And so when you talk to your stakeholders or your executives, when you communicate localization, it resonates about like, oh, it's just a translation. It has to, it really minimizes the work that we actually do when we build a localization program. And as our digital environment continues to develop and become more and more advanced, the work that localization professionals are doing has a lot less to do with the actual translation piece and a lot more to do about building a framework, a very complex framework that thread and weave language across systems so that you can have content flow, you can have data flow, and it can go within your complex environment and talk to your vendor and leverage technologies. So LangOps truly it's a methodology. You start building a language framework first so that you can expand and scale. So working for a global retailer like Gap, for example, I had very, very different use cases. And if I adopted a traditional way of looking at localization from the use case to the vendor, I would never have been able to scale, and the cost would have been unbearable for my department. So I started to look at it from the ground or the core, and I decided to build a foundation and a framework. So then I could build different workflows and I could scale that, because the workflows are variables, but the framework is agnostic and you can build as much as you want.
That's very interesting because, again, I spent most of my career in the technology industry. I'm a high-tech guy. And when I first joined Blend, I thought I would be in a completely different environment. Like okay, it's a business, it's a company, you have similar concepts. But what struck me was the similarities between the software development space and the content development space, right? It's, if you think about it, when you develop software, you create some content which happens to be software. And then there are a whole lot of activities that need to happen in order to make that content production ready. It's testing and cyber scanning and all sorts of things and production preparation. And what I realized was that what the software industry had to do in the past 10 to 15 years is exactly what you just described. It's kind of creating pipelines that allowed those activities not to be so separated and so detached from the content creation itself, but more of a flow. And I kind of said, well, hold on, this is exactly what's happening right now in the localization industry. And the more we are able to make this flow smooth and repeatable and generic, meaning that it can serve multiple actions and multiple types of content, meaning the more the infrastructure that you describe is more robust and the processes around it are more robust and people work by those processes. That's where the industry is going. And then suddenly and then I said, this is exactly what DevOps did in software development. And then suddenly I hear that there is this amazing institute called LangOps, which is saying kind of the same thing. And that's what caused us to connect, right? So I'm super excited about that. But how do you see how do you see this evolving from a concept into a reality in the industry? This is a big change.
Well, when we look at what's happening with AI, so we have to understand that, so we are moving into an advanced digital age, which is all run by data. And so you cannot process data on its own. You need a framework. And so it's an imperative, in my opinion, to adopt this framework in order to enable language operationalization, because you cannot operate data out of the blue. So you need that framework. And so it's going to be a lot of work to get there as an industry, because you have some companies that have programs that are extremely mature and that they have adopted some sort of version of a LangOps. Otherwise, they wouldn't be mature. However, there's also a lot of people that are just starting. They are midway. And so our goal with the LangOps Institute is to bridge that knowledge gap so that we can help bring that methodology. So for those that are just starting, they can build the bridge to the future. And then also for those that are more mature, like what comes next? Like, how do you help infuse those new processes with AI? What is generative AI looking like? Or how do you use a knowledge graph? What is an ontology? How does that fit within the language framework? And if I've learned anything with the work that we're doing now with AI, or that we're trying to accomplish, well, it takes a collective intelligence or a collective knowledge to really bring this all together. So going forward, we really need to work all together in the industry so that we can all thrive, really.
Yeah, and again, going back to my software development experience, it's I've seen this happening in that industry, and it took like 20 years to reach a level where this is the norm. And it started with people like the LangOps Institute preaching the concept, and then gradually, because the whole point is that technology enables LangOps. Without technology, then you have no choice. You have to have the content, ship it to someone, then get it back and do it in traditional way. But technology starts to open up opportunities to streamline that process, connect it to more directly to the content management systems, and have everything flow in a much more automated way. And one of the things that I noticed in the software industries was that some people found it hard to adjust, and sometimes even threatened by that, right? Like if you think about software testing professionals, when software testing shifted left towards development, it took time for the software industry to accept that actually you can blend together the walls of development and testing and make it a flow. And do you think that also in our industry there will be some rejection or some fear from allowing this flow to be maybe with less barriers or more technology oriented than it used to be?
Oh, there's definitely some resistance to change. There's also some fears, and I would say this is normal, right? But I think at the end of the day, it's understanding that we're preaching, if you will, LangOps, but it's not because we want to invent or create a new way to work. It's about adapting to technology. I mean, we are following what the technology is enabling us to do. And so our people in our industry, there's a strong appetite to understand what's next. And so we're trying to build that so that for those in our industry, from translators to reviewers to localization engineers to localization program manager, if you want to go further and expand, then we're hoping to build that community so that we can get to the next level. Because technology, what we see in that technology workflow for language operations is that it went from a lot of the work was done in, okay, so you have translation, you have post editing, you have LQA, you have DTP and all that. But with technologies, to your point, it's moving left, it's moving upstream. So a lot of the expertise that's been developed in operationalizing language can be leveraged to really curate, annotate, and build that language framework. It's not the same, it's different. But
Yeah.
and the biggest opportunity is that it's language agnostic. So all that we've learned to create the target language will also apply to source languages. So we have a lot to bring to the table in not only operationalizing language for global audiences, but also for domestic audiences, because we can bring along those people in copywriting, in content design. They don't have the same expertise we do in operationalizing all of that, creating the different layers, fragmenting, and then repackaging it. We do have that. And so I strongly believe that it is our opportunity to finally really anchor our seat at the table and bring language to life from data to content. So it's exciting. It's very different, but as professionals, we need to disrupt our mindset and really understand, like, hey, we're flipping the script on language. This is no longer about just transforming one content and conveying it into a different language or culture. It's about taking that data point, that idea, that concept, and building a product from it.
Yeah, and really by enabling this infrastructure that you're talking about, where you have the content, you have the data, you have the engines, the AI engines, and then the humans, all working on the same kind of conveyor belt, if you'd like. That's really where I feel the role of the language professionals in or the if I look at the company and they have a localization department, so their role is going to shift by LangOps from just managing the project of sending the content to different people to establish this infrastructure. Pretty much what you described that you didn't get, right? If I'm a localization manager in a company, I think my role now is to enable this to happen. So I need to research the technology, I need to research the processes, I need to learn about all of that so that I can make that available to my internal customers who are the content makers, right? Creators.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's about this dissecting language and really understanding how to operationalize it. So the roles and the responsibilities are going to be very different. So you're designing a framework, and so it's there's a lot of talk these days about solution architect. Where is that role? What should be that role? And so what is the role of the program manager? And and there's a huge part, it's about the design of that framework, so you have to work with cross functionally and everything. So it's I know it seems overwhelming for people who are not used to it. And as part of the LangOps Institute, we are trying to bring together also adjacent knowledge so that people that find themselves into maybe a program that is not very mature and that they have to drive change, they have the tools and the knowledge necessary to enable that. And so, for example, hey, how do you initiate an org change? Or how do you initiate change management? Or how do you even go about to socialize the idea and the concept? And is that going to resonate with your business partners? And so this is something I really care about, because when I was building those language frameworks or those processes, I didn't have that knowledge. I went intuitively from what made sense, and then it took many, many years to really refine that concept. Now we're helping people accelerate that development and take it to the next level.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying, because to some extent, we becoming a LangOps company, we kind of went through the same process, right? So we decided that we are going to have a streamlined process that has, direct connection to the content, and then AI, and then automated QE, and then, automatic post editing, and then post editing, and then bringing into NDTP and OCR and everything streamlined into an infrastructure that we built. And we noticed that we needed to explain why is it good, what are the advantages. Our people needed to learn how to operate in this, how to explain the value to customers. How do you cope with the some folks wanted more control, because when you have an automatic belt that is kind of moving things around, then sometimes so how do you develop the control mechanisms that allow people to feel that they are in control? And how do you get all of that automation? Not only save money or save time, but how do you do that while you are still providing a sense of control and quality, and people don't get the wrong feeling that they are unnecessary because there is technology.
Yeah,
Right?
this is it's very challenging, and it's also a mindset shift, right? Because as localization professionals, and from the client side, for example, you are the ambassador of the world, basically, because you're speaking on behalf of the audience globally. You have to evangelize your processes. You have to, you're the gatekeeper for your global content. And actually, the one of the most significant change and shift that enabled me to really to progress and accelerate the development of my program is at one point I decided, like, okay, let's assess what is the true value and how can I accelerate the development of the process. And it was like completely counterintuitive. I had to let go. I had to let go of
Yes.
everything and redesign and rebrand what I do. And then I decided to focus on what my team is about global content enablement. We are the expert in providing the cultural knowledge to provide the cultural not the cultural, but the grammatical and also semantic context and the expertise on language. But we don't own that content. The content belongs to all these other teams. So in starting to change that mindset, then we decided, okay, so we are the global content enabler. And actually, it helped really clarify that relationship with the stakeholders too. And the work became a lot more seamless. And also for my team, it was about like, okay, so we are automating everything. And so if you find yourself doing redundant tasks that you can automate, you need to automate those tasks. And then we need to go to the next level. So bringing that continuous development mindset to a team as you also implement continuous automation in continuous content development is also a mindset shift.
Yeah.
So
And
it's important to establish trust.
and I'll tell you what, if we don't do that, eventually the economies of the business will drive the use of uncontrolled AI and uncontrolled technology, which eventually will be a lose-lose. And again, it also happened in the software development industry. People really rushed to adapt some technologies. They were not implementing it in a way that is responsible and controllable. And then suddenly people found that they just need to redo a lot of stuff and the quality is low, etc. And therefore, this connection between the technology that exists, the people at the end, and automation in a controlled manner is really what we are trying to do. We are trying to drive the use of AI with confidence so that people actually are able to get all the benefits of the knowledge of people, all the benefits of the right use of data. They can control the quality, and yet they can do it in the most effective way, both on cost perspective and time perspective. And that's the importance of this infrastructure, right? Now, I have a question to you regarding the adoption of LangOps, because it's going to be a journey for sure. It's going to take years. Where do you see the most likely rapid implementation? Do you think it's going to start with small organizations and then gradually develop to the larger ones? Or do you think that actually the larger organizations are going to drive that and smaller organizations will follow?
Well, I think I don't think this. I wouldn't say the size really matters in this case. It's really about the team and assessing where you are, and basically also the drive to, okay, how much drive do you have to change? Because it's a mindset shift. You have to approach localization in a different way, and and I mean, there's no choice, because this is what technology imposes on us, right? And so depending on the drive that you have to drive change, initiate change, this is really what's going to determine. And because I think there's going to be a need to develop different methodology based on your maturity level. And this is what, within the courses we're going to look at. Like, so if you're just starting, actually, if you're starting, this is a little bit more challenging, because you have to implement existing traditional tools in the and have your eye on the ball that you're going to be changing soon. But then if you're also mature, you have a very complex system, and then you need to infuse new technology. So there are very different challenges, but I think it's the human skills and the drive that are going to make the program successful or not. In my
Yeah,
opinion, right now.
yeah. Well, my personal opinion is that it's just easier to do in not very small companies, but in mid-sized companies, because
Yeah,
sometimes they have a stronger need to streamline the operations, and also it's a less complex environment, so the change can impact relatively quickly, and then people see results faster. But I think there's definitely, if we talk 5 years from now, it's I think no organization will be able to not be in the journey of LangOps, and if not anything else, it's just because the professionals will demand that. They will ask a company, are you using LangOps methodology? And if not, they will not want to work there.
absolutely. And the thing is, I personally do not see any other way to enable AI technologies without a framework. And if I look back into the programs that I've created based on a framework as opposed to be based on use cases, the framework, it stand the test of time. So if years ago, even before ChatGPT, I already had conversations with my vendors. Okay, so my goal is to enable generative AI when it comes in, and these are the use cases. So I with the framework, it was already possible to start mapping out what we're going to do. So the framework is that structure. I mean, we have it as humans, right? We have a embedded grammar in ourselves that enable us to learn languages. So the structure is very important for the enablement of more advanced technology. So yes, I think it to me it's a no-brainer, but we have to share the message, and I think the more we get into AI, it's going to be a no-brainer for a lot of people. You don't have a choice, but you have to mitigate it because it's a lot of work, and it's also our goal to provide the concept and the wording and the ideation around that framework so that people can socialize the concept and really
shared
get
language, move around, companies know the same, right? Share their knowledge. Absolutely. Well, this is very, very exciting, and I applaud the Institute for taking this task. We are certainly embedded into this process because we see ourselves as one of the leaders in implementing this in our own environment, and it's a great thing for us, for us starting to work in using a framework, using those connectors, using the knowledge of people, etc., connecting the machine to the person in a streamlined way and in a predictable way is really something that is moving us forward. So I would like to end, as usual in our podcast, with a series of short, like one-sentence questions that maybe will help the audience kind of know you a little bit better. Okay, so are you ready? I'm gonna fire at you some questions and you answer. Okay. All right, perfect. So question number one: what is your favorite language?
I love Italian.
Italian. You know what? I love Italian too, and it's always to me somewhere between Brazilian Portuguese and Italian are kind of musical languages to me.
Yeah, my first language is French, but Italian takes that musicality to the next level.
Absolutely. So, languages is all about international experiences. What's your favorite place that you have traveled to?
One of my favorite cities is London. I spent a lot of time in London when I was younger, and I just love the vibe over there. It's very nice. And because I was a native French speaker, the first time I went to London, it was an incredible experience learning and being there. It has a very special place.
Awesome. Yeah, I love London as well. What is the best localization advice you've ever received?
Well, it was you don't need a title to initiate change. And so, as we know in the localization industry, and for many people with their teams, sometimes it's very difficult to promote yourself and to get promoted because the work is not recognized. And one of my old leaders told me, you don't need the title, just make it happen. And it was the best advice, because I implemented change, but then the rest came in. I was frustrated when she said that, don't get me wrong. But then it made sense. Yeah.
So, talking about advice, like, who is your localization role model? Do you have one?
Oh, well, there's a lot, but I think one of my role model was one of my translators, to be honest. And she was the most experienced woman I've ever worked with, and the most dedicated and passionate. And working with her, I mean, she had all sorts of position in the industry, but at the end she decided, like, oh, I just want to translate. And I learned so much from her and her dedication. And I wanted to mention her today because she passed away several years ago. But with her and as part of our extended teams, we were able to really build something incredible.
Wow,
so
amazing.
Yeah, her name was Isabel, so I wanted to share that today.
Thank you very much. So, Pascale, thank you for joining us. It's been a fascinating conversation. I really, really am looking forward to seeing the LangOps develop and becoming the norm, becoming the standard, more tools to come into play, more companies adopting the concept. And eventually, again, if I go back to my software development experience, everyone will be, in fact, 10 years from now or 15 years from now, people will not know the current reality we are in. So for them, it will be like, why do you need even to call it LangOps? That's just the way we do language. And that's going to be where we're going to be in 10, 15 years from now. And I'm looking forward to seeing this. So thank you very much for joining us. And good luck. Good luck with the new institute. And I'm sure it's going to be great.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure to talk about LangOps here.